near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves.
Hello all you minties, I am Dom of XComicReleases.com, assistant editor and the manager of this one and only channel, and today we're going to be doing our first overview of the DC Finest trade paperbacks, and that of which is the Superman First Superhero. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. Alright, so here we have it, the first single overview of these DC Finest trade paperbacks, and if you want to see more of these, well, I'm going to be doing every single DC Finest for an overview for near mint condition. Of course, you guys will be able to get your first looks at it, the contents inside, what I think of the inside material, without getting too much into spoilers, but I'll still go over it a little bit anyways. Page count, everything else alike, but before you do that, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are brand new to this channel. So here's a look at the front of the DC Finest trade paperbacks. As you can see, there is the iconic cover by Joe Shuster, none other than him, of course, on the cover of Action Comics #1 with the DC logo, brand new, brandly minted. You want to talk about bringing back the flagship. They decided over SDCC, this was a move by James Gunn and the people at DC Studios to bring the iconic bullet logo back into stock, and I'm really glad they did. They just started out with this change in the single issues a month ago for their DC All-In initiative, and now we are finally getting these for the trade paperbacks. I can't say because I haven't seen the other books that have come out yet besides the DC Finest, so I'm not sure if they're doing these for the trade paperbacks, hardcovers, and omnibuses and absolutes just yet, but I guarantee you that they will start doing those as soon as they can, and eventually when we get the DC Vertigo back, we will see that on titles such as Scalped Volume 2 Omnibus and The Dreaming. Here's a look at the spine, and if you want to see how it stacks up with another DC Finest logo, or I should say book, here it is right next to Batman, which is coming around the same time as the Superman video drops. So if you haven't gotten a chance to check out the Batman one yet, or you're interested, be sure to watch that video right after this one. So we have that as well. The years are also on the side of this. So again, 1938 to 1940, the bullet logo right there, which is a little bit smaller than the Batman one, but I think because of the fluctuating page count, it's something that we will have to deal with. And of course, the DC logo is circular and it's not rectangular, so you will have a bit of leeway in terms of the size differences between those in each of these books. Here's a look at the back, presenting DC Finest stories. The same blurb is up at the top of each of these. We got to see a mock of this back a couple of months ago when we did our launch stream, and also Omar when he did his regular overview with stuff sent to him by DC. We got to see the back of these as well, and a look at some of the back covers, or I should say some of the covers are presented on the back. So if you're looking as to what you are probably going to be getting as far as the sample size is concerned, we do have those issues of thereof. Along with this as well, we have the years highlighted. They have a complete timeline of all of the years that are present in these DC Finest trade paperbacks, of course, from 1938 to 2011. So 2011 is going to be the cutoff, because right after that we have the trade paperback age, where stuff is already readily available in standard size hardcover or trade paperback as far as arcs are concerned for books. Sometimes they don't, but for the most part, I mean, 99% of books will usually end up with a trade paperback collection, but it's specifically from this era, so anything right before Flashpoint is fair game for being collected in this DC Finest format. Champion of the Oppressed, we have the blurb as well for the solicitations under here, and for those wondering, this volume collects Superman issues 1 through 5, Action Comics 1 through 25, along with the first issue of New York World's Fair. This is 584 pages for the nice price of just $39.99. Let's go ahead and take a look inside the book. Alright, folks, let's go ahead and take a first look at none other than the Superman DC Finest, the first superhero by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster trade paperback. Here's a look at the inside. Here is a look at the cover. Of course, there you have Joe Shuster as the credited collection artist. And, of course, Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster with a special arrangement by the Jerry Siegel family. Here's a look at the copyrighted information along with the editors and everyone else who designed these books. Steve Cook, man. Steve Cook, I have to commend, not only for the uniformity of these books, but he's done a tremendous job with other books too. The most recent one I can remember just being amazed by, and I know it's a route. It's the Doomsday Clock Absolute collected edition that I was really, really fond of. A big shout out to him and a big shout out to Reza Lockman. If you guys didn't watch it with us yesterday, Mark Wade was able to give him a shout out on not only handling the edits of the books, but also getting the line together and getting all of this, I think, right. And a look at the table of contents. I have a nice little note at the top saying that all of these stories are indeed by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, unless otherwise noted. And you have all of these, including the page counts. They actually do a really good job. A lot of DC books, unfortunately, just don't have the page counts along with them. I'm really glad that they did, though. And a big, big kudos to DC for including that, along with, again, fair warning for those who weren't already aware, these were all untitled, but are titled here for convenience for the reader, along with being, another fair warning, produced in a time where the world was sort of not in the best place. And we're of course talking about the war in Europe and in Japan that I'll be able to talk about later, hopefully along with you. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were two immigrant children who were born to immigrants from other parts of the world, Jerry's being from Lithuania. They got their career started by doing a periodical called Science Fiction in 1933. It was mimeographed, and it told the story of this bald madman called Superman. But Siegel and Shuster completely switched it up and realized maybe it was time to do a different take on the character. Eventually, he became a refugee from this dying planet on Krypton, and the inspiration became this impossibly strong man who could beat up anyone. They were meek people. They weren't the biggest bodybuilders at the time. You want to talk about the jocks who were in the US Navy during this era of comics. They weren't like that. They wanted someone to look up to. And because they couldn't fix a lot of their problems in the ways that they wanted through the unfortunate persecution of people like them in this period of time, they decided that they could do something more, and that's how they came up with the inspiration of Superman, who would eventually become the character that we know today. And of course, you can't talk about the golden age of Superman without talking about the context of the times. The United States, along with the rest of the world, was struggling from the Great Depression, and after the success of the roaring 90s and the boom of the stock market, it eventually crashed, and the country was seeped into plenty of shortages everywhere. You want to talk about food shortages, you want to talk about the Dust Bowl, you want to talk about banks being unable to supply people with basic loans and needs because they just could not afford it, which led to Franklin Delano Roosevelt being elected in 1932 to institute his New Deal, and the whole country completely changed in the years since then. And it was crazy because it was a complete contrast to the 20s, since most people were probably enjoying themselves despite prohibition. And there was a question of whether people were going to be able to experience life and well and handy, or if they were going to spiral into depression again. America needed a distraction, a solution. Here comes a plane and here comes a bird. No, it's Superman. Action Comics was a full-fledged feature of not just Superman. Of course, you have the Siegel and Shuster stuff, but also other characters that you might already know. So Superman in the Action Comics stories were 14, 15, 16 pages. They weren't particularly long in length, although these took a long time for me to read. Back a couple of weeks ago when I was preparing for the scripting material for all of this. You want to talk about other comic book characters that also appeared, like Satara, the Sandman. They also appeared in some Action Comics stories, Action Comics backups. You have Superman as the front runner for the pages of the story, but that is what you are dealing with as far as this is concerned. But one thing I want to highlight here, I was talking with Philip Kennedy Johnson about his inspiration for his Warworld run, and he noticed something to me. It wasn't always truth, justice, and the American way for Superman, not that it is anymore. He was a champion of the oppressed. It's highlighted in the back of the book, and it continues to be highlighted at the front of a lot of these stories, right? A lot of these blurbs and images keep telling you about the inspirational acts that Superman can do, right? The stuff that where he can fly, he can leap, he can bend steel, he can lift weights that no one else has been able to lift before. But again, it all comes back down to the idea that he is the one who is helping the helpless, helping the oppressed, helping against the forces of evil. And that really is the push as far as what was important to all of these Superman comics. It was the idea that you had this champion who was able to destroy domestic violence, was able to, at a turn, completely rip apart the forces of destruction. And by forces of destruction, I'm not talking about, hey, it's the end of the world. I'm talking about crimes that he's able to solve in an investigative lens. I'm talking about people that they aren't your, man, it's Darkseid. I gotta defeat Darkseid. I gotta defeat this. No, it was, again, in the context of the times, you weren't thinking about, we're gonna look at this universal threat, because we hadn't gotten to the nuclear age yet. We are in the late 30s, early 40s as far as this is all concerned. And most of what the world was thinking of then wasn't universe-shaping destruction like we do now with the multiverse and everything else of that sort, right? It was street level, if you even want to call it that, city level crimes. And this was more or less, right, a lot of the Pulp Fiction at the time. It definitely was a reflection of the period that it's in. And of course, you all know the story, the double identity of Clark Kent and Superman. You have this bumbling reporter who doesn't have exactly everything else under his belt, but once he removes the regular suit, removes that disguise, removes that costume, well, he gets into costume and turns into the most unstoppable person here on the world. I also want to highlight that I found Lois Lane in the Golden Age to actually be quite satisfactory. She appears in a couple of issues. Well, by a couple of issues, she is prominently featured in plenty of these issues. In Action Comics 1, Clark asks her out on a date. Things don't go well. But she isn't written off as, oh, Lois is just some girl that's super cute or is hot and wants to date Clark or wants to date Superman. No, she has a character. She's feisty. She acts for herself. She can think for herself. Again, like me reading this in the context of the times, knowing what the views on feminism were, because women had only had the right to vote for about 15-ish years or so, I found Lois Lane to be a particularly stronger character than I thought she was going to be. And of course, there you got the ad for Batman. And I actually appreciate this, that they put some of these house-in ads for these Action Comics issues, because I think they're just as important to the story as some of these are. And I'll talk about this in the Batman one. Some of the advertisements are obscured. Like, for example, we have this page right here, right before Action Comics number 14, where it's a fill-in page where it would have been an advertisement. We don't have that here. We unfortunately have some of these ads pushed away, but we do have some of them still up in this book, which is a really nice treat to see. And once again, Shuster, man, I gotta say, Joe Shuster, the way that he draws the action scenes of Clark, or I should say Superman in this case, being able to fight crime, just plowing his way through every single thing in his path. You want to talk about him bulldozing. This is a guy, every single panel that he's in, you can feel the weight of the punches, of the pushbacks, of the blows that he's inducing on all of his opponents. I gotta say, I have fallen in love with Joe Shuster, I think, as a comic book creator, as an artist. It quite is literally a treat of the time for me. I also have to add that this is different, right? This isn't the Daily Planet, so Perry White isn't your editor-in-chief. It's a guy named George Taylor. So George Taylor, well, I had to get used to. I eventually did, though. I have definitely appreciated him being the stuck-up guy, even if he is a little sexist, which I will get to in a minute. This is very much a wonderful Golden Age treat. I never would have imagined myself enjoying Golden Age comics as much as I did, but I think the appreciation of, again, who this character stood for in the late 30s, early 40s, and even now, what an amazing concept these two creators were able to build up in the moments since then. You also have a whole host of different stories. You got miners who are trapped. You have chasing people after hit and runs. Superman is scoring touchdowns on the football field. There's Lex Luthor. I should add to that as well. Clark's investigating a story behind a man who committed suicide. Jimmy Olsen has a cameo in this book. Spoilers? I really, really enjoyed all of the treats that this book had to offer. Again, this isn't your world-ending Clark Kent, but this is you getting to see what the inspiration was for literally not only every single character story that Clark has had going forward, but also for Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, and the rest of the superhero genre has to offer. It's also not a coincidence that New York was highlighted especially in these issues. Ellis Island was and is the heart of immigration in the United States, and I remember in my AP US history class about how important this and the Statue of Liberty was, and how those themes are clearly set in place on full display. New York's Fair, for those wondering, which again is also included in this book, was a 1939 expo, and I thought, man, was this the inspiration for the Stark Expo in Iron Man 2? Where nations around the globe and bright companies and organizations were brought to host these pieces of art, films, performances, and a whole bunch of exhibitions. And the comic for that specific New York issue was also meant to highlight this in the same structure as the Action Comics. So you got to see Satara, the Sandman, and other characters be included. Now, granted, those characters and their stories aren't in here. Again, I'm talking about characters like Satara because they're not Superman. So you won't see Action Comics, Satara does this magic thing, because it's only meant to highlight Superman in the 31 issues that are in here. But the shenanigans that ensue in the New York Fair issue are also as well drawn out and as thought out as a lot of the other issues, because Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were on their A plus S tier, whatever you want to call it, game. And again, it's all highlighted wonderfully in this book. And I also have to add the Lois Clark dynamic, the back and forths between them, along with the Lois, Clark, and Superman love triangle, are the things that kept me rolling along, if you want to talk about things in this book that inspired me to continue trudging. It's sort of the same feeling for me that I had when I was first reading Silver Age Spider-Man, the soap opera drama of it all, along with the action. And again, like him and Lois interacting with the Daily Star and everything else alike, I have to commend Jerry and Joe for creating super, super fun, delightful stories in here. Trains are being pushed away. Superman is just so awesome. I also have to add in that they do have a text story in here. I sort of glossed over it earlier. But they do have a text story by Jerry and Joe explaining why is Superman so strong. It's all highlighted here. And it is prose. Again, a lot of these issues do take a long time, but they're so worth it and so well thought out. And you see the two in their comics run and highlighted in and throughout. I'm trying to see if I can find a specific advertisement in this book. And right here is another example of why I really like these collections. Superman did a fantastic job of highlighting that kids needed to go out and eat healthy in order to have really good lives, long lives, healthy lives. You want to talk about Superman talking about eating cereal and sponsoring that to the children of this age. I think it really encouraged a lot of kids to have an example and a role model in their life if they already didn't. Supermania was so big that it got to the point where it was literally every single page, every single story filled with him giving out good messages, right? And that, I think, is the beauty of Superman and why you should pick up this book. I think it's not only a good treat of the time, it highlights everything that this character was supposed to be. The champion of the oppressed, the champion for those who are helpless. Being able to solve and do things no other men could. And that to me is why I love this specific story. And again, it's not perfect. It does unfortunately have a lot of tropes at the time, and when they eventually put out volume 2, I actually am going to wonder how they're going to reprint that cover to issue 58. Because again, when you are in the heat of World War II, with, especially here in the US with Japanese internment, I know it's a heated subject, definitely not one of the highlights of the FDR presidency. But it is something I think to be talked about with these stories, these old stories, and how we can learn from the messages that were displayed and how to move on forward. Move on forward in a positive manner. But I think that's the ever-growing challenge of Superman, and I think why he continues to be a cultural icon today. It's not just him being able to do all these things. It's why he's able to do all of these things and the reason for him doing it. And also, for those wondering, there is no back material. This again is at 584 pages. Let me see if I can highlight. So they do have a timeline of books. So here are the first 3 books that are coming out in November. So Wonder Woman is coming out next week. Batman came out this week. And again, if you are done or you're done with this video, check out the Batman one. They also have future volumes here. They don't have the dates listed, but yeah, complete your DC Finest library. So no extra covers, no extra strips or anything. But again, at $39.99, that is what you are going to get with these books. And that, as they say, is that. Now, if you want to buy a copy of DC Finest, the first superhero, please check out our sponsors.
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. BD Cosmos, the Canadian leader in graphic novels. They have a physical storefront in Montreal, Quebec, and their website, bdcosmos.com, offers 25% off your order of over $99 or more, and free shipping everywhere in Canada for every order of $200 or more.
Their shipping care is exceptional. Your books will stay cozy through the rough Canadian weather and arrive to you in near mint condition.
After checkout, let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way, and you'll be added to the monthly $25 gift card raffle. Entries are valid for new and returning customers.
Don't be afraid to call or email them. Ask them questions. Their staff is always happy to help guide you towards the right purchase. Visit their website, bdcosmos.com, for more. BD Cosmos, with rewards and raffles taking care of customers in Canada. Eh?
And that's going to be it from me, folks. I am Dom of X, and signing out as always, you be you. Take care and dominate the day wherever you go. Stay fresh, Minties.